Ian Murray.
Mr Davies, it's a great pleasure for the first time to serve and speak under your chairmanship. Can I pay great tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Ealing and Acton, for bringing this debate. And if it's the case that the tactic of flattering the Minister brings answers, we're all going to have to start being slightly nicer to government ministers to try and extract some answers. So I wait with bated breath if that tactic actually works. This is an incredibly important debate, and most of the issues that are being discussed this morning will be quite repetitive, because we all represent universities, university cities, where we're very concerned about the impact of Brexit on what is happening at our universities. And it's not just opposition politicians that are saying this, it's the vice-chancellors, it's the principals, it's the students, it's the student bodies, it's the staff, it's the academic staff, it's the people who are involved in research, who are constantly knocking on our doors at our advice sessions, and indeed they'll be watching these kinds of debates and want these questions answered, not just for their own personal needs in terms of their own academic careers or indeed their passion for higher education and research, but for the wider economy and the wider sector in terms of higher education. That's something we should be bearing in mind, and I hope the Minister will take these comments back to the Secretary of State for Exiting the European Union and tell him how important it is that he has a seat at this particular table to be able to champion the cause of higher education in this particular debate. In the short time I've got, Mr Davies, I want to concentrate on Edinburgh University because it's in the heart of my constituency, but epitomises a lot of the issues that are being discussed right around the country, whether you're Oxford, Cambridge, Loughborough, the west of Scotland, as we've just heard from my honourable friend from Paisley. Edinburgh University is very much unique because it is one of the world's top universities. It has 25% of its academic staff are from the European Union. That compares much higher to an average of 21% for Russell Group, but also 15% for universities across the UK as a whole. 14% of all the students at Edinburgh University are from the EU. That's almost 5,000 in the last academic year, and that 14% compares to double that of the average of the Russell Group universities, and indeed it's only 5% for other universities across the UK. 10% of Edinburgh University's entire total research income of £226 million in 2015 comes from EU sources, with the largest proportion going to research in colleges in science and engineering, of course, which is the driver of innovation in terms of the future needs of our country and indeed our economy. Figures up to February of 2016 ranked Edinburgh University as the most successful Scottish higher education institution within the UK for Horizon 2020 funding, and ranking 6th across the EU, the entirety of the EU, gaining nearly €60 million in funding to date from that particular project. So you can see, and I hope the Minister realises how concerned we all are about Brexit and about the impact it's having on not just EU nationals, but also in terms of research funding and, critically, collaboration, because it's 30% of the entire output of research from Edinburgh University, one of the world's key research institutions, is from EU collaboration, co-authoring with other EU nation-states. And we know through anecdotal evidence and indeed some factual evidence that we've already heard from some of my honourable friends this morning that universities in the UK are still involved in these collaborative projects, but they're being told not to take the lead, not necessarily because of the skills or indeed what they can bring to those projects, but because of the uncertainty that leaving the European Union will have on these particular projects. And it's something the government has to reflect on incredibly seriously. If we have universities in this country who are at the cutting edge of technology and research and development, unable to take the lead in these big co-authored projects across the European Union, it diminishes our ability in the future to be able to run other major projects and diminishes the higher education and research sector in this country. And to put it into some kind of context, Edinburgh University is 30% of co-authoring with other EU member states. It's only 18% with the United States. It's almost double, and that's why it's incredibly important. So I won't rehearse the arguments that my colleagues have already done, but let me just very quickly ask the Minister to respond and to re-emphasise the questions that I think we need answered. We need to maintain UK university access to EU research programmes. We need to seek the income, the partnerships and the influence, and we need to make sure that those outputs are indeed collaborative with UK universities right at the top of those collaborations. We need to continue UK contribution and access to EU research infrastructure like CERN, in terms of some of the big research projects. We need to preserve research excellence across the university sector. We need EU nationals to be told they can stay and continue to work here. And we need to continue to make sure that free movement in terms of both EU and non-EU is prioritised for our university sector, so they can attract the very best and the very highly skilled researchers. We need early clarity of the rules which will apply to tuition fees, both at UK, Scottish and EU level, so we can make sure that our future funding for our universities is secure, and we need continued access to Erasmus schemes. That's what universities are telling us they want. I think the government certainly has to deliver.